How you doing, Jim?
Good.
Put it up here.
I may be an unfamiliar face. I was gone for a week, more than I had planned. I went back to D.C. to watch a very, very good friend retire from the Coast Guard, and I forgot not to drink the water or breathe the air, so I came back with some East Coast germs, and it's been hard to shake them, so I'm going to sound a little stuffy this morning. I will cough in this direction so that I won't contaminate anybody, although I don't think I'm contagious right now. Welcome. Good crowd this morning. Thank you for being here. See an old friend, Dan, former Jefferson County Commissioner Dan Titterness, and his bride, the parents of Mark, up here in the front, so they're going to try to smile instead of glower. And glad to have you with us this morning. I don't know if I see any other unfamiliar faces. I don't think so. Okay, well anyway, let us get started with our Pledge of Allegiance. Anthony, can I ask you to lead us in our pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The guy in my Rotary Club says, play ball. Sherry, now a thought.
Good morning, everyone. We have a quote from Steve Jobs this morning. He said, people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. All right.
I'm sure he didn't say that this morning.
No. Okay, any announcements from PABA officers or committee chairs before we get launched into our program? Betsy, I think you have an announcement.
I just want to say thank you for all of you who, for the last year since June 2013, who've given your blood, sweat, tears, and a lot of money and a lot of elbow to make Captain Joseph House a reality. You may have heard along the way that our first Gold Star families will come for their first respite on October 7th. And we are very excited. These are the families who lost in the same Humvee explosion that Joseph was killed. They've always wanted to use the bedroom first, that's named after them, and for the rest of the families from around the country. But to that, you all were a successful participant in our auction on the 19th. And you, each of you who participated there by donation, by checks that have come in, raised over $91,000. So thank you very, very much for this endorsement.
That is great news. Thank you. Okay, without any further ado, Andrew.
I would, due to the nature of, we're going to have a new sheriff no matter who gets elected, and I would say pertinent to our bylaws, if questions continue, we extend till 8:45.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we got plenty of time. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, members and guests, candidates, their entourages, member of the press. Good morning and welcome to another beautiful day in Port Angeles. Law and order, it's a beautiful thing. Survey after survey shows that people really judge in their community on how safe they are. And we've been pretty fortunate here in Calhoun County. We are statistically below the national and state average on most crimes. We have not had the sheriff department be in any major scandal for quite some time. Thank you. We should also acknowledge that whoever we vote on, it's going to be a new sheriff, because we know that things trickle from the leadership down to rank and file. So before I move on, let's thank the sheriff for his 4 terms as leader.
Andrew will say say that was kind of a low bar, but it's very important nonetheless.
To be low on crime, I don't think it's a low bar. If you look around the nation. So one of these gentlemen are going to be your new sheriff. Let's give them some time to tell us why they want to run, what they would do as sheriff, how they will answer your questions, and then you can make an informed decision. Let's introduce our candidates. First of all, we have Brian King. Brian, welcome. And Mark Titterness. It's the same forum we're used to here. Each gentleman will have 5 minutes to say whatever they want, tell us why they're running, etc. If they so choose, after that, they can have another 2 minutes to follow up, comment on what their opponent said. Then we move to questions. We love guests here. Please join, because one of the reasons you're a member is you get to ask questions. We will go to guests if all the other members here have no questions. All questions must be directed to the candidates, whereas both of them can answer. With that said, Brian, you'll start. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. I'm going to try to talk without the mic. I don't know that I'm as loud as Andrew. So if you cannot hear me, let me know, and I'll certainly reach that. Sure. Born and raised in Clown County, my passion has been for safe communities. I've worked hard over my 27 years in law enforcement to ensure that my friends, my family, and my community are safe now and for future generations. I believe that because I want my children to come back and live here. We've done a tremendous job at the Sheriff's Office. Our professional standards are recognized by the state in what we do in our accreditation and our practices in both the road and in the jail. Sheriff Benedict, I'm going to reach out to you right now and thank you for everything that you've done for our professional standards. We have responsive law enforcement services here in Clown County. We take crime seriously. We take rehabilitation in our county seriously, because we know that just putting people in jail doesn't solve all of our problems. We are innovative in our jail, in our approaches to rehabilitation. We know that our jail needs to be a place for incarceration. We know that there's certain people in our jail that have to be there because of isolation, and we have punitive measures in the jail because jails are punitive by nature. But we know that we have to break the cycle of incarceration. I have 3 goals. I have 3 goals in my first 4 years, excuse me. Number 1 is to truly look at building the EOC that this county so desperately needs. It was great to listen to the commissioners yesterday, to Ron Cameron, our undersheriff, that's been working so hard to bring a seismic tolerant EOC to our county. We need it. We know that the big one is coming. A Cascadia subduction zone quake is going to devastate our county. We know this. We need to get our EOC out of the basement of the courthouse so we can respond to this event and save lives. We have a county that's vulnerable. We have a high elderly population in our swim area. We know by even small events, when we lose power because of the weather, we have families that are dependent on medication. And the EOC is activated and we get medication to those families that need it so much. When the lights go out, folks in our county who are dependent on oxygen in their homes, they call the EOC. We ensure that they have the power and help they need to get that oxygen there. In a Cascadia event, there's going to be so many problems. We need to build this EOC. And we're moving forward. And with the support of the commissioners and Ron, we're doing that. Number 2, jail expansion. It needs to happen. Is it going to happen in 4 years? I don't know. EOC number 1, jail expansion number 2. But we don't have the adequate facilities in the jail to provide for the medical services and the needs of our population that exist in the jail right now. Currently, we have 103 inmates under our care in our jail, many of them with serious health issues, and just a little room to try to treat them. It's a requirement of the sheriff's office. Once you come in, it's custody and care. And custody and care requires that we maintain the health of our population. Our population is drug addicted. They have a lot of health conditions, mental health conditions, and it's our responsibility to try to treat that, break the cycle of incarceration. Number 3, and this is really important because it covers so many areas, is to maintain our accreditation. Our accreditation is so key to providing professional and quality law enforcement services to the citizens of Clallam County, and doing so reflects our low crime rate. It's a third of the state average. We live in unincorporated Clallam County is a third of the state average. We do a good job. Our clearance rate on cases are double the state average. We do a really good job. Experience keeps our county safe. And for that reason, I'm running for the office of the sheriff, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Mark, please, 5 minutes.
Good morning. I wanted to thank everybody for being here today. Can everybody hear me okay? I need to hold the mic closer. Okay. So, 10 years ago, I moved to Clallam County because I wanted to raise my family in a small town environment. I wanted my kids to be safe. I wanted them to be able to walk the streets, go to school, back and forth to home without worrying about what happened to them along the way. The Olympic Peninsula has been a home to me since I was about 9 years old. This was my second home as a kid growing up. And when my wife and I had the opportunity to come back, we came here because, again, safety for the kids. The issues that we're seeing in our community today scare me. I don't know about you guys, what you're seeing, what's going on. We've heard crime is down in Clallam County. We've heard crime rate here in Clallam County is a third of the state average. We've heard that there's no real problems with crime here, but yet we've had a 300% rise in motor vehicle thefts is what the Sheriff's Office put out earlier this year. 300% rise this year over last year. We've had countless home invasions, vehicle prowls. We've had armed robberies. Businesses in Clallam County, armed robberies. We've had a woman mugged and ran over by a car in the Safeway parking lot. Another woman, her dog was stolen as she was walking down the street and she was assaulted. All of these things that have happened in Clallam County recently, all of these crimes are a result of the last few years leaving people on the streets and not putting them in jail where they belong. When COVID came out 3 years ago, they reduced the population of the jail to about 60. When we would arrest somebody as a law enforcement officer here in Clallam County, and we'd make an arrest for somebody burglarizing your home, or stealing your things, or minor assaults, we literally had to let them go, had to let them out of the back of our patrol cars. And that went on for years. That's gone on for the last 2.5 years that's happened. Like I said today, the population of the jail is at 107 this morning. The population of the jail has been capped. They start restricting it at 90. And we have a 120 bed facility. We do need to expand the jail. That's absolutely correct. And medical care and custody, as Brian said, is absolutely what we have to do when somebody's in the jail. The other thing we have to do, though, is we have to expand the jail to actually accommodate the needs of the community. With 120 beds, when I started working here 10 years ago, I worked in the jail. 120 beds was our capacity then. But it was not uncommon for us to have 140, 145 people in custody. Today, with only 107 in custody, the same problems are happening because we're still having to turn people loose. The most commonly repeated phrase on our police radios has been the jail won't accept over the last few years. When somebody burglarizes your house, steals your property, the expectation has to be that they go to jail for harming our citizens. That's a basic concept that even toddlers learn, that there has to be negative consequences for actions. And if there are not those consequences, of course, the behavior never changes. Now, addiction obviously is something that has impacted our community. It's impacted everybody. It's probably impacted just about everybody in this room's lives, whether personally or friends, family members, etc. But there is a difference between addiction and committing crimes. The criminal mindset is not the same as, the psychology is not the same as people who are using drugs, substance abuse disorder. We do have to treat substance abuse disorder. We have the MAT clinic that's opened up in Sequim. There are MAT clinics here in Port Angeles. And bringing in those services to the jail to assist people prior to getting released is positive. But it's not the primary focus. The primary focus of the jail is to actually separate the people who are harming our citizens from the rest of the public. And until we get serious about actually doing that, we're not going to see a difference in our crime rate. We won't see our crime rate come back down. We also have an issue with our staffing. Now, I know I was told we have one open position right now on patrol, and that might be true, one open position. And we have 2 that have been on extended leave. We have 3 that are in training. That means right now we're down six deputies on patrol, 10 deputies in the jail. Part of the reason the jail population has been limited over the last few years is because of staffing levels. We have to get serious about staffing the agency. The EOC is important. Jail expansion is important. We have lots of important things we need to work on in this community, but the Sheriff's Office primary focus right now has to be staffing this agency and retaining the good officers that are working for them now and recruiting officers in the future. And until we get serious about doing that, we can't make a positive impact for public safety. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mark. Brian, if you'd like 2 minutes to continue on or add any comments.
There's a national staffing crisis in law enforcement. It's just not here in Clown County, it is national. Public safety testing, who we contract with to provide our services in recruiting and retention, they tell us every day, they're studying the problem, they're helping us, they're advising us. They're telling us there's more openings in Washington State than there are qualified applicants in our state. This is gonna be a crisis, it's gonna be a crisis to continue. Mark is correct. We have 1 opening currently in patrol. That shows how serious we're taking recruiting and retention. Look, go out and talk with the other law enforcement agencies across the state. Seattle Police Department down 400 officers. Tacoma PD down 80 officers. We're all competing for those same pool of qualified applicants. Our failure rate in the background in the jail right now is over 80%. It's difficult to get people to come into this job that are qualified, and we're gonna continue to do that and fight hard for it. Home invasions, countless home invasions in Clown County, I don't know anything about that. I've never heard countless home invasions. They're not countless home invasions. Robberies in Clown County, yeah, we had a couple robberies of marijuana retail businesses here in our county. Suspects coming from Kitsap County, Pierce County, working with the task force in order to identify who those people are. Yeah, it happened here, but they're not folks from our community. We're working hard. They've been arrested. They've been arrested for a string of burglaries or a string of robberies up and down the I-5 corridor. We do have a staffing crisis. Our jail is open. We had COVID. COVID changed our world 3 years ago. COVID changed our world. The rules and how we ran our jail changed. It wasn't by choice. It was by COVID. It was by a proclamation by the governor that said, this is how we have to do this. We have to maintain a healthy population, not only for our staff, but for the inmates inside. High liability. There's high liabilities there. We had to make tough decisions. We chose to incarcerate the most serious offenders in our community, but that's in the past. We move forward. We're done. COVID's in the past. Our jail is open.
Right, thank you. And Mark, would you like to take 2 minutes, please?
So let's talk about the national staffing crisis. That's absolutely a real thing. It is a national staffing crisis. And the law enforcement community and corrections has also been impacted by that as well. If you look what's going on in our community though, we've got Jefferson County is fully staffed, Swin PD is fully staffed. Brian, I don't know how you're doing on staffing right now, but last I looked, you were pretty close to being fully staffed. Clallam County, on the other hand, currently has 17 officers of the 23 positions funded. 17 officers of the 23 funded positions are actually able to be out on patrol. Like I said, we have 1 opening. We have 2 that's been on extended medical leave. We have 3 that are in training. It's going to be 12 to 18 months before those 3 come out on training. I was told at the fair we have 1 open position, but it's not been a real priority to get that position filled because we have 3 in training right now. Well, every position has to be a priority when we're down this low in staff. Currently, right now, there are 2 to 3 officers typically patrolling from Lake Crescent to Diamond Point. Does that make anybody in this room feel safe or feel like they can respond on a timely basis if there's an emergency? It's not safe to the public, and it's not safe to the officers. And as far as staffing goes, let's take a look at what staffing levels for other agencies look like. Population-wise, the industry average, 1.38 officers per 1,000 population. Clallam County has 44,000 people in unincorporated Clallam County that the Clallam County Sheriff's Office patrols. 1.38 officers per 1,000 population. We are doing it with 35 commissioned staff and currently 17 officers on patrol. Now, LA County, the Sheriff of LA County says at 0.9 officers per 1,000 population, that is a crisis. We're doing it with 0.38, less than a third of what LA County is doing right now. You got Swin PD, has about a 1.2. Port Angeles PD, about 1.2, 1.3. Jefferson County has about 1.2 to 1.5. Here we are with 0.38 officers per 1,000 population in Clallam County. It's not safe and it can't continue. Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Now we go to questions. We'll be alternating between them. Mark will start the first one. And the question comes from our organization. I think you were both sent it. We've heard in your opening the concerns of the county. You heard also in the opening that we certainly know that the safety of a community is really dependent on how people think about moving here. So could you tell the audience here what each of you think is the biggest threat to Clallam County's public safety, and more importantly, how will you address it, Mark?
So the obvious answer, or the go-to that everybody says is drugs. Drugs are impacting everybody's life and is a threat to public safety. Crime comes with drugs. The true answer, in my opinion, is that it's lack of accountability for criminal conduct. If you have somebody who goes out, burglarizes a house, steals a car, gets caught, and they don't go to jail, there's no consequences for their action, what is the deterrent to keep them from doing that again? That has happened time and time again over the last 3 years, and it's going to continue to happen until we do something different than what we're already doing. We've got 0.38 officers per 1,000 population, again, to patrol Clallam County and to go out and find people who are committing crime or to be a deterrent to crime. It's just not enough officers to cover the entire county. What we need to do different is we need to open the jail. Brian says the jail's open at 107 people incarcerated right now in a 120 bed facility.
Okay, I just start in the middle.
107 is more than the jail has had over the last
Not enough
3
for
years.
2 of them here.
I don't know when it opened up to that level. They capped it at 90 a few months ago. At 90, that's still only 75% of the jail population or the jail capacity. Once the jail is open, we also need to staff with officers and we need to staff the jail in order to open the jail. Now we talk about the staffing crisis nationwide. We've got a wealth of resources right here locally. We don't need to staff from the I-5 corridor or from other states. We don't need to recruit from that distance. We've got a wealth of candidates right here in Clallam County. We've got a community college of students who want living wage jobs that we can go and talk to, that we can build a program with. We've got criminal justice courses there that they teach. We've got 400 students, is what I was told, doing criminal justice courses right here at the community college, looking for criminal justice jobs. And we've got 15 jobs right now available in Clallam County. We've got to get out there and talk to people and let them know the jobs exist, and we have to actually actively bring them into the office and build those relationships.
All right, thank you very much. Same question, Brian. What is the biggest threat to Clallam County's safety, and how will you address it?
I see it every day. It's mental health and untreated mental health in our community. We see it every day when we drive through Port Angeles. The cart is before the horse when it comes to funding for mental health treatment. Folks are committing crimes every single day. We've thrown money at navigators. We've thrown money at all these really innovative programs, but what we don't have is a capacity, a place in our society to take folks that are in mental health crisis, keep them there, and recover and be treated in order to break this cycle of incarceration and crime. We have innovative strategies here, but the capacity of our system to treat these folks does not exist right now. As sheriff, I can do everything that I can in a jail setting, looking at those folks. We talk about our population in the jail and why it's only at 103 today. It's because we have folks with untreated mental health conditions who have to be isolated. They cannot be a part of our jail population because of their behavior. They become a threat to other inmates if we don't isolate them within our jail, which oftentimes requires us to actually remove beds to where we have to put them in a jail cell where there's actually 2 beds. That's 1 bed, we have to isolate them there. That reduces our ability to have 1 more person in jail. When we talk about expanding the jail, we need to look at, we have oftentimes, last week, talking to Tammy Van Over, our mental health counselor, we had 10 people in crisis. We don't have that many crisis cells in our jail. It was never designed for that. It was never designed to deal with the mental health population that we must treat today. That's our crisis in Clallam County right now. It's addressing mental health.
Mark, do you see that connection with mental health and the reason that we have fewer capacity in our jail?
So the mental health crisis that we have in our community is very real. But mental health, mental disorders, same with addiction disorders, they're not criminal in nature. And while mental health and drugs do impact crime in our community, the percentage of people with mental illness that are actually out committing crimes is much less. Being mentally ill is not a crime, and it does need treatment. And treating people for mental illness has to be a priority, but it's not something that needs to be done strictly within the jail. That is not the appropriate setting for treating mental illness. It is not the appropriate setting for treating addiction either. That's why we have the rehab clinics. That's why we have mental health hospitals. Do we need more mental health hospitals? Absolutely. Do we need lockdown facilities where people can go when they do commit crimes? You bet we do. Do we need to keep people in jail for weeks or months at a time for committing crimes in the community because of their mental illness? Absolutely not. So to say that the jail capacity is limited by the mentally ill inside the jail, I just don't think that's accurate at all. We have single cells that are available to use for isolation. We've got a number of those, but what it doesn't impact are the day rooms where we've got 10 to 15 people in those rooms. It doesn't impact those rooms. You've got open pods You're not going to put one person in a cell that holds 15 people, and you're not gonna limit that 15 people capacity to just that one person. And if you're doing that, using all of that real estate to house that one person, it's just an inefficient use of that space.
Brian, anything to add again on this relationship of mental health and capacity?
It's much more complicated than when Mark just played this out. It is much more complicated than that. We don't have the capacity in the jail for 10 individuals that are in crisis. That affects our population. We talk about classification. If we go down into the roots of being an administrator in the jail, we have 3 levels of classification. You know, we have high, medium, and low. And right now, when you're managing coming out of COVID, you know, we have a lot of mediums, we have a lot of high offenders, and then we have mentally ill individuals that cannot be, yeah, we have open beds in the jail. We absolutely do, but it's because of classification, it's because of isolation, it's because of treating a really difficult population to manage. You cannot put somebody who is mentally ill in a pod of 5 or 6 other inmates or into general population. In 5 minutes, you're gonna have a fight. That's what we are dealing with right now, every single day. Will we continue to come out of COVID? We still have to have some isolation practices. We're required to do so. That takes up capacity. Are we gonna be back to 120? I am confident we're gonna be back to 120. And that is a reasonable number in our jail to be able to keep our community safe and house the individuals that are committing crime. Every police officer, including myself, we want people who need to be in jail. We just have the responsibility to manage it safely.
I think did you want to add something, Mike?
I do. It looks like Brian Pruitt's got a question. Another gentleman over here, if you want
Yeah,
to.
and again, we'll, yeah.
Okay.
And we probably have to protect Kai's mental health and let him start with the 2-part question. Right?
Okay. How are we doing?
Is it working? Can I ask you to use the microphone so that everybody can hear?
Hi, hates.
I would like to ask the candidates, if elected, how would you see collaboration with other law enforcement agencies, federal, state, and local, Border Patrol, FBI, State Patrol, city and tribal police forces, joint efforts like HopNet? How do you think can those leverage the resources that the Sheriff's Department has to keep the county safe?
So Brian, we start with you. How would you work with all the different agencies and leverage that power?
27 years of law enforcement in Clown County. I don't want to put Chief Smith on the spot, but if you talk to any of the chiefs in this county that we collaborate and we work with every day and ask them who you would vote for, we need to have that collaboration. It's there, it exists. I leverage those relationships every single day. As the commander of the Olympic Peninsula Narcotics Enforcement Team, which I've been a part of for 7 years, that exemplifies what we do in Clown County. $7 million of dangerous drugs last year removed from the street because of that collaboration. It will continue to occur when you look at electing experience, which is what I'm trying to ask everybody in this room to do and understand. It's 27 years of creating those relationships. They exist now. It's why our crime rate is where it's at. We are 3rd of the state right now. 26. I don't know where Mark got some of his numbers. I'm trying to do the math in my head. WASPIC does the statistical tracking for us. We compare across multiple different crimes. Yes, we do have a auto theft problem, but it exists statewide, and it's because of poor legislation. It's not because of professional standards and relationships. It's because of poor legislation. We all knew that. We talked about it for a year and a half. And, you know, as sheriff, what we need to do, and we're partnering right now, we're having these conversations with our legislature. It's like Mike Chapman, Senator Jesse Solomon, they're coming out, they're gonna meet with us here in Clown County. Come out and look at us and look at the work that we're doing in the community and telling them that we need their support post legislation that has hamstringed our ability to arrest individuals in our community that are in possession of controlled substances, and to pursue stolen vehicles when all of our criminal element know that we can't do it. Those are challenges. And those relationships that we talk about as we're having. Chief Smith, he's not here.
Over there.
There he is. You know, he invited Senator Solomon here. He's like, you've got to understand our world. And he's coming, he's talking. That's the value of those relationships. And it's invaluable. That's why our community is so safe.
Mark, same question. If you're elected, how would you work with all these different agencies? How would you bring about better cooperation? How would you leverage that power?
I love the collaboration that we have in our law enforcement community here. Port Angeles PD, Squin PD, the Border Patrol, all of the tribal agencies, LWA, Jamestown. I haven't seen anything like it anywhere else. The agencies working together, sharing the office like we do out in Squim, being able to sit there every day and work on each other's cases and help each other with our cases. To be able to respond and back each other up when calls come out, it's refreshing to be able to work with a community that supports each other like that. That collaboration is part of what has helped the Clallam County Sheriff's Office over the last few years be able to maintain the staffing level that it has and keep the cost down to the citizens. No administrator that I have ever seen has done as good of a job as keeping costs down to the community as Bill Benedict, as the Sheriff of Clallam County. He's done a remarkable job at controlling the budget. He's done a remarkable job with reducing liability, and all of the administrators, Ron, Brian, you've all done a fantastic job of doing that. Want to hit real quick on Brian's statement as far as the mental health in the jail and the number of beds available for mental health crisis. We have 12 beds that I can remember available, single cells where people can be housed individually. That's 12 cells that can be used for those mental health crises. Again, that doesn't impact the population in the other cells, the larger areas. That's it.
And then Brian, since your name was invoked, would you like to?
Yes. So when we talk about those single cells, it's not just mental health. We have to have medical isolation. We have to have protective custody. Inmates who have committed sex offenses that can't. So we talk about people that are in crisis, but we also talk about those folks that we have to put in protective custody to save them from their peers that are in the jail. And then we have folks that are, severely withdrawing. Like if you ever saw somebody withdrawing from fentanyl withdrawals, it's ugly, it's disgusting. They have to have care and treatment. A vast majority of the criminals, the individuals that are violating our laws are coming in. Within hours, they're having severe withdrawal symptoms. We have to treat them. We can't put them into general population. These are challenges that we have every single day in our jail. And, it's reflective of where our population is. Society is different today than it was even 5 years ago. Yeah, we could get up to 140, 150. The drugs that are on our streets today are more dangerous than they ever have been before. They continue to trend. It is a challenge. And these are challenges that we look at and we overcome every single day at the Clallam County Sheriff's Department. We know that we're forward thinking. We look at this. We are very successful in managing. We talked about liability and keeping the costs low. Yes, we want to do all those things and be fiscally responsible. But the bottom line is that the jail is always going to be a challenge, and it's always going to be ever changing.
You want to respond?
Real quick. I absolutely agree that managing the jail population is ever a challenge, and we do have to change in response. But the one thing we can't do is stop doing our job. as challenging as it becomes, we have to be open. We have to house the people that are committing crimes and hurting our community members. We have to do that. That is the basic of what this agency provides. That is the basis of public safety, and failing to do that is unacceptable.
Okay, next question. I
Brian
think,
Pruitt
Yes.
has had his hand up for 5 minutes.
and then Matthew will get it next.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. You know, obviously, we're all interested in what law enforcement is doing for our county, and I appreciate what each of you have done so far. So we've got 3 issues impacting us in the jail and what you're doing. That is the this need for the state crime lab to be fully funded and operational. It delays all the trials. And we've got what the mayor of Spokane calls legislative lawlessness. And we've got the state mental health hospital, which hasn't been supported by the state. Those are impacting our jail and population, trials, and everything else. So my question is this: over the next 20 years, how many beds do we need to have in our jail to take care of all these state mandated issues? And will you support a proposal to get one built?
So Mark, you'll start. In 20 years, over 20 years, what do you see as a projected need in beds?
I think,
And again, remember, Brian put in the caveats of different state issues as well.
I think over the next 20 years, in order to determine how big of a facility we need to have an accurate projection as far as what our population growth is going to do. In other communities, I've seen other facilities I've worked at, 400-bed facilities to match the population that we have right now. Now, as you said, the crime rate in Washington State is less than it is in other states. I don't think that 400-bed facility is what's needed here in Clallam County. I think that would be a little ridiculous. But we are going to need to see a growth, and I would have to do more research in order to actually make a statement as far as how big of a facility we're going to need, and that's going to be based upon the projections of the population growth.
If you could wave a wand today, how big would it be?
If I could wave a wand today, it'd be about 160 beds would be a minimum. That would also take care of the difference for the different populations that we have to manage. Crime lab support, that's fantastic. Legislative lawlessness. Mental health, again, the jail is not the place to treat mental illness. Being mentally ill is not a crime. And that's gonna require work from whether it's Brian Pruitt, Sue Ford, or Mike Chapman, Steve Theringer, Kevin Vandewey, to actually fund that and to take mental health seriously in the state. That's going to be in your lane, Brian. Thank you.
Brian, same question with all the different state issues plus what's going on here over the 20 years, what would you see as capacity? And I'll ask the same question too. And if you could wave your magic wand, what would the number be today?
I think it's more about redesigning and remodeling what we currently have at the courthouse. And so we look at the trends, we look at the needs of our population today. Really what we need is isolation and treatment. And so I believe that the capacity of our jail is, we're at 120. We know that we can get to 130, we can get to 140 based on how we can manage the population. What we struggle with right now is isolation. And isolation to the 3 reasons why I talked about earlier. I don't believe that we need to expand our jail and have this such a great expense. When we get up to the point to where we can put people in jail, we're putting people in jail that need to be in jail. If you look at booking restrictions across our state in some jails, no misdemeanors are ever gonna go to jail. Class C offenses usually are never gonna go to jail because everybody is struggling with those same issues that we struggle with. These are just challenges. These are challenges that we work to overcome to ensure that we have safe communities, and we're doing that. The statistics tell us that. The crime lab, you brought up the crime lab. It is frustrating. It is frustrating. We have to wait 3 months to 6 months, 3 months minimum for DNA results on a homicide. 6 months is the normal turnaround. Sometimes we even see it at 9 months, and then we're limited by the amount of articles that we can submit to the crime lab. For example, we have homicide that we're still working on. Our detectives are still working on a homicide that we had out in the Dungeness area, where we are still gonna have multiple submissions of evidence before we can get to the point to where we say, like, we have submitted all the evidence that we need to be able to do, because we're limited in capacity. Blood tox screenings on DUI drivers, 3 to 6 months out. We know, often delaying charging decisions. And so when you look at the capacity of our system right now, those are DUIs that don't get charged till blood results come back. And you know, you want to show, you know, folks, especially in the realm of DUIs, you want immediate results. You want to see, you need to have folks that are being charged at the time that they're committing their crime, yet we're delaying that justice piece, and 6 months down the road, or we're really changing somebody's behavior, because 6 months down the road now, they're being charged with a crime. And maybe that's the point where they start to seek the treatment, the court order treatment. So there are a lot of delays in the system. We talked about the capacity at Western State. Currently the average, talking to Tamara Van over in the jail the other day, 103 days before a court-ordered evaluation occurs. So we have somebody sitting in our jail for 103 days before they get that mental health evaluation for competency restoration at Western State before we can even proceed with a trial. That directly affects our jail population as well. These are challenges.
And then Brian was asking you to look into the crystal ball. Can you tell us what the jail in your mind looks like in 20 years from now?
You know, I can't, because there's so many different trends that are occurring in law enforcement and in society. That crystal ball is tough to forecast. We need, you know, every 5 years it's changing, but I do believe that's going to correlate with the population of Clallam County, where our rate is at the time. My passion and my purpose in life has been to ensure that I have safe communities here for my friends, my family, and for future generations. I don't take any of that for granted. I'm always looking forward thinking, looking ahead, looking at the next threat that's coming to our county. We do that really well.
Okay, Matthew's been flagging me.
I have. So first of all, as somebody with 29 plus years federal law enforcement, I want to thank you guys for what you're doing, and all the state and locals. I think you're doing a phenomenal job. But I want to pose a hypothetical. Let's say you find yourself in a situation to where you have some elderly citizens facing down against some younger citizens. So you got 20, 30 elderly citizens facing down hundreds of younger citizens at a counter-protest situation, and the older citizens find themselves getting assaulted by the younger citizens. Would you stand by and watch it happen, or would you interject yourself, no matter how big the opposing force is, to try to protect those people that are getting assaulted? What do you think is the right thing to do in that situation?
Brian, you start this one. And it's elderly and young, but I also think the question is small force against large force, expanding that way.
Yeah.
What would you do as sheriff in these situations?
We've strategized at the command level in the sheriff's office, dating back for 3 years, as we look at emerging threats, as we looked at some of those different protests that were occurring, whether it was election, whether it was mask mandate, all of these different things. And what we know here in Clallam County is that we have to plan and we have to prepare. And what that means is, whether it's working with our City of Port Angeles partners or our swim police partners, what we do is we get together, we leverage those relationships, we put a plan in place, we go out there and we address the threat. And really, oftentimes addressing that threat is just your mere presence. Getting, you know, an overwhelming police presence keeps communities safe. And so when we see those threats, you know, tactically, that is what you do. As a law enforcement officer, I can't stand by and watch buildings burn, crimes being committed, elderly people get assaulted. We just can't do that. But what we do that is we plan, we put ourselves into positions where we can prevent that. And then if push comes to shove, and it sometimes does, we see it all over, you need to be in a position to take care of the problem and remove the agitators.
Mark, the same question. It's not just young and old, it's smaller numbers, larger numbers. How would you deal with the sheriff's department in these overwhelming situations?
So I apologize, I didn't catch your name, sir. But for those of you that are not aware, what this gentleman was speaking to was a very unfortunate incident that occurred about 2 weeks ago in Port Townsend, where I am a police officer and where I was involved in a protest where I was one of 2 officers assigned to actually be in the crowd at that protest. The incident that occurred was there were 30 elderly individuals, as you said, that were protesting a decision that the city made, and protesting a policy, a state law actually, that passed a few years ago. And there were about 300 counter-protesters that were present that day. When the application for that protest came in, the organizer did not request any law enforcement assistance. Stated they didn't need law enforcement present. They stated they didn't need any barriers. They wanted it open to the public. So the administrator that actually organized that protest made a plan, and his plan was to block the streets so that vehicles couldn't come through and run people over. That's happened in protests before. This protest was occurring at the time of the city council meeting. And he was also tasked with protecting the city council and securing the entrances and exits of the city council. He was tasked with being present in the council chambers. And in a small agency, such as Port Townsend Police Department, that left myself and one other officer to patrol the crowd of 300 people. So what's seen on the video and what's been circulating is that myself and the other officer stood by and watched these women become assaulted. What occurred were minor assaults. They were being pushed into, they were being pulled on, and it was unfortunate. It was unfair. It was unsafe. In that crowd of 300 people, myself and that other officer stepped back across the street. We contacted State Patrol, and we had State Patrol officers come in to assist us. And we went into the crowd to remove the agitators, which is what we did. And I got turned into that I turned my back on those women being assaulted. That's extremely unfortunate that that's how it's being portrayed. At the time that I walked across the street, there were very minor contact between those protesters. It was not somebody being feloniously assaulted. That night after that protest, at the end of the night, there were no major injuries reported. There was no major property damage that had occurred. And all of the agitators who had assaulted those women have been identified and are being prosecuted. Every single one of those crimes are being taken seriously. One of the things Brian mentioned there, and you can use this if you want, but I don't think you need to, is he said you plan for an overwhelming police presence. 2 officers in a crowd of 300 is not an overwhelming presence. And we did everything we could to keep everybody safe that night. Thank you.
Anything to add, Brian?
Yep.
Okay, next question.
Jim McIntyre raised his hand first, and it has to be a short one. Jim?
Not necessarily.
Question on speech.
Let me try to make the wind up as short as possible. The sheriff's department, any police department, is a part of a continuum, part of a law enforcement system. You make arrests, those cases are referred to the prosecuting attorney, charging decisions are made, court dates are set, et cetera, et cetera. We all sort of know that. Do you have any thoughts about potential pinch points in Clallam County relating to the system of law enforcement and administration of justice. You have a sitting county commissioner here in the audience today. Are there capacity limitations at each step in the chain that we, the public, need to know about, or the county commission needs to know about? Are things working as optimally to get crimes adjudicated eventually and convictions judged and sentences set and so on and so forth? Describe your view of that system, if you would.
So Mark, the question is to you, and it's on pinch points and, all the way from arrest to committed.
Sure. So pinch points. Try it again. How about now? So pinch points from arrest to court. Officers on the street are definitely a pinch point. Not having enough law enforcement in our community, we've talked about that. 3 officers patrol from Lake Crescent to Diamond Point. That's going to be a pinch point as far as getting people who are responsible for harming our citizens into court. Another pinch point is going to be not booking into the jail. The reason that's a pinch point is because when somebody gets booked into the jail, it starts a clock. It puts that case in front of the prosecutors and in front of the judges where they have to deal with it. If we don't book them into the jail, we forward the cases up to the prosecutor's office. The prosecutors have as long as they need to review those cases and determine whether or not they're going to make a charging decision on it. That amount of time that case sits in limbo, as we said earlier, that's you get somebody who commits a DUI, 6 months later they go before the judge. That 6 months has been a delay in justice, and by that point there is no learning to be had due to that delay. I think part of the problem also is with the prosecutor's office and their staffing level. We've got great prosecutors. They do a great job handling cases. My understanding is they're down a couple prosecutors right now, and that's going to cause a backlog of cases that they're going to have to eventually clear when they get those positions filled. So as far as pinch points go, that's what I've got, Jim.
Brian, same question, pinch points.
Well, Jim, we've covered some of those pinch points when we talk about delay in justice when it comes to evidence in the crime lab. And then we talk about the lack of staffing. Not necessarily on the police front. I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of cases every single day that is going to the prosecutor's office. Mark is right, there's capacity issues in the system right now. And it has to do, just like in policing and a difficult recruiting environment, the prosecutor's office in almost all industry and in all jobs in our community right now, nursing, all these things, there's those challenges all the time. There is just a constant demand for qualified folks in our work environment, and it's making things extremely challenging. Justice delayed is justice denied. We know that the longer case takes to roll through the system, you lose witnesses, you lose folks that are critical in prosecution. Prosecuting cases has never been more difficult than before. There's an expectation by our juries here in Clallam County that we get all the evidence, and all the evidence is analyzed. Policing and putting forward cases today is much different than it was even 5 years ago. We have cell phones used in crimes every single day. They have to be analyzed. It's exculpatory evidence. They tell us so much about a person's criminal conduct. They can tell us if they were at the scene of the crime or not. So those are all expectations that we as investigators must do. The work that we have to do to get a case, a prosecutable case, to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in just 5 years is much more work. And we continue to have where our biggest challenge right now when it comes to investigation and prosecution of cases is all the evidence and going through all that evidence. We brought in a lot of innovative technologies in order to aid us and push that forward. But because of that capacity, and I will tell you, the sheriff has given me a lot of rein in that succession planning process that we have at the sheriff's department to push forward this year's budget to the commissioners. I'm asking for 2 more deputies. I'm gonna ask for 2 more deputies this year, and it really has to do with more so, it's the work that a single investigator, single deputy has to do to make a case that is gonna be prosecutable. I don't understand Mark's numbers about 0.39 or how we get to that. I'm telling you, it's 0.76 when you look at commission. We have WASPIC who studies those things for us. We know sheriff's office, we're average. We have, average staffing. Is average good enough for us? No, I don't think it is. I want it a little bit better than average. We want to maintain those safe communities. I absolutely want to do so. Mark talked a little bit about, the challenges with staffing. That we have, 2 deputies that are out on extended medical leave. That's just a reality of work. Those are 2, that just happens in our work environment. And it's gonna continue to happen, whether it's in nursing, whether it's in teaching. My wife's a vice principal out in Forks. They have 9 or 10 teacher openings that they can't fill. That's just where we exist. Getting off the question, but capacity wise in the system, there's a lot of cases being pushed forward, and COVID didn't help us at all. COVID slowed everything down, getting juries, getting folks to come in. Now you have this tremendous backlog of cases. Prosecutors have to make really hard decisions about what cases they're prosecuting and where cases they aren't gonna do. Our world was turned upside down by COVID, and the Clown County Sheriff's Department and our criminal justice system actually met the challenges. We met those challenges. Look at our crime rates. They don't lie.
And Mark, since your name was invoked, you want to tell us where you got those numbers from?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I did the math earlier, he said 0.76, that includes command staff, that's all commissioned officers, is where we are at right now. And that is what we're budgeted for, 0.76. Again, WASPIC says the average is 1.38 is the average in the state of Washington. We talked about all of the neighboring agencies and where they are in those averages. We're budgeted to be below that number. 0.39, he said he didn't know where that number came from, so just to do the math for everybody. We currently have 17 patrol officers patrolling Clallam County. That doesn't include the ones in training, it doesn't include the ones on medical leave, and it doesn't include the open position that we have. That comes up to about 0.39, 0.37 is what that number is as far as the numbers that are actually patrolling Clallam County. Another thing you mentioned on was prosecutable cases. That's very real. We've got to have cases, we've got to build cases that the prosecutors can actually get a conviction on. That's fact. When you have that few deputies doing those investigations, it makes it that much more difficult to get those prosecutable cases, to do thorough casework. I think we had 1 deputy last year that over 2,000 calls for service, 2,000 calls for service. Industry standard is about 600 to 800 per officer. We had 1 deputy do 2,000 calls for service. I believe the average deputy at Clallam County is doing 1,000 to 1,500 per year. Again, we've got to stay within those standards. It's not possible to do that caseload and to provide the quality casework that's required if we're doing twice the industry average.
I have a whole bunch of hands up, but I'm going to ask my question, because Andrew said I could.
Do we not have to extend the meeting?
already
We
did.
did.
Oh,
Took care of that in the beginning.
Sorry.
So, magic wand time. If you could go to the legislature, and don't make it a big long paragraph, just answer with 1 sentence. What would you say to the legislature to change the law to make your job more efficient and better? Because we know a whole lot of rules have changed in the past 3 years pertaining to your job as policeman. So just give me 1 sentence that says what you would ask those legislatures to change.
And Brian, let's make it be your magic pen. What legislation would you write?
criminalize drugs. I mean, that's where we're at. We gotta criminalize drugs again. That's our challenge right there, right now.
Thank you.
Mark, same question, magic pen?
You had a great response there. Fundamental health. As you said earlier, mental health is absolutely a crisis in our community and every community across the state. And the length of time it takes for somebody to get the help they need is absolutely deplorable.
Sherry's had her hand up.
Code enforcement. The last DCD wasn't strong on code enforcement. Presuming the next DCD will want to strongly address code enforcement, how do you plan on working collaboratively with the Director of Community Development, and what is your experience on code enforcement in Clallam County?
The perennial question, code enforcement.
So, code enforcement obviously is a hot topic for you. And it's absolutely something that we need to address in Clallam County. The number of calls that we get on a regular basis with complaints of how properties are being kept or raw sewage running on the streets and down into the streams is it's shocking to say the least. As far as working with code enforcement and how will we assist, any way we can, whether it's Brian or I, any way we can. Okay, we have to take the code enforcement issue seriously in Clallam County, and yeah, that whatever you need.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Same question, Brian, code enforcement, how will you work with the DCD?
So I represent the sheriff's office on monthly meetings on code enforcement with the staff within the courthouse, because I'm very passionate about code enforcement. I believe, and I talked with Sherry before about this very same issue, that the sheriff's office needs to be a partner that is at the table when it comes to the declaration of nuisance properties. Once they've been declared, a public nuisance, that the sheriff's office needs to be involved and have that criminal enforcement arm available to address the nuisance. And that's where we failed in the past with our previous DCD directors, that that collaboration just was unwelcome. It was unwelcome, and so we weren't solving problems. That's what we need to do. We need to solve those problems. Part of my ask to the commissioners, and it's going to come up for those two positions, is my intent there is to create an additional position that will liaison with code enforcement. It will be a deputy that works with code enforcement, liaisons with them, so we can advance these nuisance property cases. I've seen it work. The Humane Society, meeting after meeting, we just weren't advanced. We were getting tons of complaints about how ugly that Humane Society is. When you have these nuisance properties, they breed criminality as well. It goes hand in hand, and finally, just after looking at it, all the complaints that were coming into the public, it's just like, I want to take lead on this one. The sheriff has taken lead on Midway Metals. Like, we just became frustrated. Bill went to Midway with metals. I went up to the old Humane Society. We said, we're going to make things happen, and we did. It's that collaboration and that involvement that needs to happen. And it's not an easy process, but it happens when we leverage relationships, just like we talked about leveraging relationships with our local partners. DCD is no different.
We have time to sneak in one last question.
It's not so much a question as a request. I don't know who's going to come out of this election, but as we bring in families, Gold Star families from throughout the country, every state in the United States, they will be the lens to Captain Joseph House. Not only the program at Captain Joseph House, but they will be taking back their experiences in our community back to their community. We want them to go back with positive feedback, that it was a place that was safe, it was exciting, that everybody was protected. And so as you go into your next careers, whoever is going to be our next sheriff, please remember that we're not only asking us to care for us, make it safe for us, but we want to be sure that the families that come to Joseph House are as safe as we are, because they will be sharing that information. So thank you.
You might be able to get another question in, because I would expect that both of you agree strongly with support with
Paul
community.
Gottlieb has his hand up. He's
All right.
flagging me. It has to be short.
Because he just can't retire.
That's true. I wanted to ask you about your view of your role as sheriff. Do you believe that a sheriff has the duty and authority to disregard laws that they believe are unconstitutional? I'm referring to the so-called constitutional sheriff movement. As far as I'm asking about your role, if you believe that you have the power to disregard laws that you believe are unconstitutional. Thank you.
So Brian, we'll start with you. Do you have the ability to use the office to disregard state law or not enforce it?
So we have, it's invested in every single law enforcement officer, discretion. And discretion, you know, the laws are there. We swore to uphold, but there are laws that we are not going to enforce because of that discretion. Because we have to look and see what is best for our community, what is best for public safety, where we need to focus our concentration and our effort to do that. If we were to enforce every single law that is thrown at us, then, you know, we would be extremely ineffective. It's all about resourcing. And I know that you want to get, you know, that there's a little bit more to that question, but what it comes down to is making decisions that are best for our community and best for our public safety.
Mark, same question. Your ability to choose?
So, like Brian said, law enforcement is entirely about proper utilization of discretion. And there's not a blanket statement, Paul, that I can say that absolutely, unequivocally, across the board, we're going to enforce everything or we're not going to enforce this. Every particular situation has to be looked at as a separate situation and use your discretion based upon the totality of the circumstances of that situation. Yes. And then one last thing on staffing. You know, the DCD having a deputy that is assigned as a liaison for code enforcement. Again, it comes down to staffing in order to make that happen. And right now we're down 6 people off patrol right now. I know there's only one open position, but we're down 6 people right now. And until staffing is addressed, I don't know how that's going to be made a priority and still be able to maintain the basic functions of what we're supposed to do.
Okay. Well, before we go to close, as always, we should always admire someone who not only wants to do public service, but put themselves out there for the questioning. So please, 2 fine candidates, let's give them a round of applause. And with that said, Mark, please take a minute to close. I'm sorry, Brian, please take a minute to close.
Experience keeps our county safe. With continuity, succession planning, that experience from the 30,000 foot level versus the 300-foot level. I've been a commander, I've been an administrator for the past 7 years. I have 27 years in law enforcement. Over half of that has been as a supervisor. I'm motivated every day by the men and women who join me in my vision and work alongside me, who I can lead and who have a passion about law enforcement, public safety, and safe communities. We have a sheriff's office. There's over 100 employees. They share that vision. They share that vision because we've created a culture in the past 16 years that we are extremely proud of. We want that continuity to continue. The Port Angeles the Port Angeles Chamber of Commerce, we were nominated for Organization of the Year. We were in the final 3 as finalists. The community understands the good work that we do. The crime stats reflect that. Yes, we demand a lot of our deputies out on the street. We demand professionalism, but that's because we want public safety.
Okay, Mark, please.
Experience matters. Not all experience is the same. Brian's had 27 years in law enforcement right here in Quality County. I've worked for State of Kansas, Wyandotte County Sheriff's Office. Prior to my law enforcement I also was a manager, managed several small businesses, owned my own small businesses. Experience does keep us safe. When I left the Clallam County Sheriff's Office 3 months ago, I was the 3rd senior officer on patrol in Clallam County. I had 6 years of experience. 6 years of experience, was 3rd out of 17 officers. Experience does matter, ladies and gentlemen. This election, there's going to be a change, and that's what's on the ballot. Change is on the ballot, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, both candidates. Mr. President, I hand over the meeting 1 minute late.
Thank you.
Here.
Who's counting? Which one do I use?
Both, it'll be stereo.
Yes. No, it'll be feedback, I'm sure. Thank you very much for being here this morning. These two fine candidates have given us a lot to think about. The choice is not easy, but I think we're better equipped this morning, and we want to thank both of you for being here this morning with us. Hopefully we go away smarter and wiser. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.